Okay. So today I'd like to talk to you about the possibility of living from wholeness, of actually functioning from wholeness, and why you might want to do that, what some alternatives to that are, so that you could familiarize yourself with what it might look like to do otherwise, and then some ways to begin to explore living from wholeness. So So think for just a moment of what it actually means to be whole. To be whole means that you are complete, means that you have everything that you need, that you're not missing anything. And then consider that on a scale which is absolutely inclusive. So sometimes many of us might have the habit of identifying as something limited. So we might identify as our personality. We might identify as our roles and responsibilities. We might identify as a particular form. Many different things that we could identify with. And each and any of the things that we might identify with are limited. So your personality is limited, your roles are limited, your body is limited. All of the things that you might identify with are limited. And so you could experience it's kind of a uh not there's would you is an oxymoron maybe what I'm about to say. You could experience relative wholeness at the level of anything that you might identify with. So you could say, well, my body seems to be whole. You could say, I seem to be whole as a parent or as a spouse or as a friend. You could relatively you could say I'm experiencing relative wholeness. But I'm inviting you to consider wholeness in a much larger scale. The on the scale is absolutely inclusive of everything. So to be complete, to have everything that you need, to be missing nothing in this totally inclusive way. So there's no part of you, no aspect of you, there's nothing in any way that is lacking. You're absolutely whole. Think about what that would be like. Could you worry? Could you fear? There would be nothing to worry about. There would be nothing to fear because if you are already whole on this scale of total inclusivity, then there's nothing outside of you that's going to harm you. There's nothing outside of you that you could lack. So that's the wholeness that I'm inviting you to explore or consider. So as you allow yourself to really feel into that, what that would be like, or maybe even what that is like, then just notice what is delightful about it. And notice also, in contrast, all of the familiar habits that attempt to pull you into those familiar patterns of what I would call really self-harm, lies. I'm missing something. I don't have something. Something bad could happen to me. I might get harmed. These kinds of familiar habits of thinking and feeling, imagining, that they're so commonplace to you, you don't even normally notice them. It's sort of just like white noise. It's there all the time, constantly running. And all of the conflict. Should I do this? Should I do that? What would be good? What would be bad? What will they think of me? Where am I going? Am I going to the right place? Am I going to the wrong place? Am I doing the right things? Am I doing the wrong things? All of these familiar patterns. So from this place of wholeness, perhaps you can start to notice those familiar habits as the impulses arise. Now, if this is too much for you, don't worry. I'm going to break it down. But I thought we could just start here. Just if you're willing, if you're curious, you give yourself at least a taste of what's possible. You don't have to hold on to anything. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to understand it. That's not what this is about. This is just an invitation just to discover directly. Right now, you could just allow yourself to actually have this glimpse or this taste of wholeness. And then just notice what it is that normally seems to pull you away from it. It doesn't really pull you away from it, but it seems to. It distracts you. This, these layers of noise. What if? Oh no. Regret, blame, shame, disappointment, discouragement, anger, impatience. I could just go on and on, couldn't I? There's so much stuff there. And it's just running all the time, isn't it? All day long. And like I said, you don't normally notice it, but you can notice it. It's easy to notice it in contrast. You just allow yourself to feel into wholeness already, already here. Nothing missing. Where are you going to go? What do you need? You don't need anything. But these impulses keep coming, don't they? These keep coming. But what about this? What about that? So perhaps, as I said, you can notice what's delightful about wholeness. Maybe that doesn't ring a bell. Maybe you say, I don't know. I'm not so sure I understand what's delightful about it. It seems uncomfortable, unfamiliar. So maybe you can notice what's delightful and maybe not. And that's okay. Just an invitation. So if you notice your normal life, what you would normally say, well, that's what my life is like. That's what I'm familiar with. It consists of all of this, what I'm calling noise, all of this stuff, this agitation. What do I need to do? How am I going to fix my problems? How will I get the things that I need? How will I get rid of the things that I don't want? How will I become secure and feeling good constantly? And now notice what comes up for you when you observe all this. What do you start to think about? I don't know what the answer is, but you could notice what comes up. I'd be willing to bet that for some of you, maybe not all of you, but for some of you, probably you start to get some ideas about, aha, now I know what I'm going to do. Now I know how I'm going to fix my problems once and for all. Now I understand. I'm going to get me some wholeness. I'm going to get rid of all of this noise. I'm going to finally secure this wholeness for myself. Like I said, not for all of you, but for some of you. Is that true for some of you? Do you notice that? So now that's a that's a familiar energy, isn't it? You can recognize it in yourself. You can also recognize it out there pretty easily, can't you? I mean, if you think about on a bigger scale, in the not just in an individual scale, but on a worldwide scale, nation states, totalitarians, despots, dictators. Isn't that what they do? It's for your own good. I will rule with an iron fist for your own good. This is what we're doing in ourselves. Oftentimes, I'll crush the rebellion. I'll destroy all of this noise. And then I'll get me some wholeness. But can you see the mistake in that? You're going to get wholeness by getting rid of parts of yourself. Won't actually work. I'm seeing at least one blank stare. That doesn't make sense to you. Doesn't make sense to you that getting rid of parts of yourself can't give you wholeness. But if so, think about, see if I can think of an analogy here. Oh yeah, so there's a story. I don't remember where this was, like in a children's book or something. It was, but this this story about I've told this story before. I think there was a king, and he wanted to go to the moon, and so he started building a tower of just things, just stacking things. So started by getting all of the, boxes and chests and dressers and all these tables and things. It's just started stacking them up. And he climbed up on top, and I'm not quite there, not quite to the moon just yet. So he called down to his people and he said, bring more things. Bring all of your things, all the things that can be stacked into this tower. We're going to build this tower taller and taller and taller until I can reach to the moon. So all the people went and they got all of their things and they brought them back and they started stacking them up. And bit by bit, he got closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And they'd stacked all of the things. And there were no more things left. And he's reaching and reaching. And he says, I can't quite reach it. I'm not quite there. And He says, there's got to be something else down there. You got to find something. And they said, we can't find anything. There's nothing left. We can't find a single other thing. And so the king's thinking and thinking and thinking. And then he says, aha. He calls down. He says, take the thing from the bottom and pull that out and pass it up here. I don't know what this has to do with wholeness. That wasn't a good story at all. Uh, but imagine the reason I thought about it was because what I was really thinking of is this. So imagine that you have a house and there are parts of this house that have fallen into disrepair. And they're part of the structure is starting to rot. It's not looking good. And you get this brilliant idea. You say, well, let's just remove it. Let's just remove it. Let's just remove the pieces, the rotten pieces. Then it will be a nice house again. Let's just get rid of the rotten pieces. Then we'll have a nice house. Parts of the house are nice. So if we just remove the rotten pieces, call the contractors in and you explain to them, you say, look, here's my plan. I just want you to remove the rotten pieces. And they take a look around and they scratch their heads and they come back and they say, well, we see a slight problem with this. You say, I don't want to hear about any problems. Who's paying who around here? I'm paying you. You do as I tell you. Just remove the rotten pieces. They said, well, the thing is, and you say, I don't want to hear another word from you. I just want to see some action. You say, okay, if you say so, boss. And then, of course, your house, your precious house, your delightful house, it just comes crashing down upon you because some of those pieces and parts were needed, you see. So if you're gonna get rid of parts of yourself in order to achieve wholeness, will it work? No, it won't work. It's kind of obvious, right? If you say, well, there are parts of myself that they just seem to be a problem. I need to get rid of those parts of myself. And when I get rid of those parts of myself, then I'm going to have wholeness. It's for some reason. Oh, well, here's the reason why. It's because in general, we are trained to be unthinking. We're trained to be unthinking. We're trained to be unaware. We're trained to be insensitive. And so we we that what should be obvious is not obvious any longer because of our training. We've been trained out of trusting our intuitive clarity about things. Because the intuitive clarity is if you remove a part of yourself in pursuit of wholeness, that's not going to work at all. It's absolutely insane. And yet we've been trained so that and the masses of us, not just a few of us, it's not just a few insane individuals, it's that the entirety of society is insane. The entirety of society is insane, and it trains the members of society to be insane. You have to train people to become insane. The little children are not insane. Uh, uh, they have their own challenges and difficulties, but they're not insane yet. They have to be trained to be insane. So we've been trained to be unaware, unthinking, insensitive, and insane, so that this this idea is spread around, made very popular that just get rid of parts of yourself. That's the solution. And you can see this is not just on the individual level. This is happening at all levels. This is how society works. If we don't like it, we'll get rid of it. And and I don't know if you've ever read the book Animal Farm by George Orwell. It was a commentary on the same kind of idea, but more as it plays out in politics. But the same idea. And I'm going to ruin the book. Spoiler alert, just so you know. So anybody who, if you don't want to, if you've never read it and you don't want to have it ruined, you just cover your ears. Uh, so the animals on the farm are all, living as animals on a farm do. And the humans, the farmers, are living as the farmers tend to do. So the animals are living in their pasture and pens and barns and so forth. And the humans are living in the house. Well, the pigs say, you know, we think it's not very fair that, the humans seem to have it better than we do. And we're the ones that are doing all the work around here. So, tell you what we should do. We should get rid of them humans. Let's get rid of the humans. And then what we'll do is all of us animals will all be equals instead of being subordinate to those humans there over there. So they get rid of the humans, and then the the pigs explain to the rest of the animals. They said, well, now we're all equal, but some of us are more equal than others because somebody's got to organize things around here. So somebody's got to do that hard work. And so we're just, us pigs are obviously best suited to this job. We're we're all equal, but us pigs are more equal. And at the end of the book, the as I recall, this was a long time ago. I read this book. This is like, 30 plus years ago. But as I recall, the last scene in the book is the looking in through the windows of the farmhouse, and you see the pigs who look almost identical to the human farmers at the beginning. Indistinguishable, really. So you see, the idea is that we're trying to get rid of things. We're trying to get rid of things. Say, I don't like this. I'm gonna get rid of it. But it doesn't work. And what happens is that it ends up just coming back through, you usher it out through the front door, it comes back in through the back door. And you just continue the same game. You say, that's my enemy, I got to get rid of it. And you usher it out through the front door, and then it comes back in through the back door. Isn't this true in your life? Have you noticed this? You try to get rid of things. Say, I'm going to finally get rid of this, whatever it is, whatever you judge in yourself. You say, this is bad, 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 bad. I got to get rid of it. And you think, I've finally succeeded. I got rid of it. Ha 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 ha. And then it comes back. And it's just a matter, and in fact, it never really went anywhere. It just takes you a little while to realize that it's still there. And usually when you do realize that it's still there, ooh, that's a painful situation, isn't it? Because for a while, you've been scratching your head saying, gee, why is it that things don't seem to be any fundamentally better? They should be better. Look at all the improvements I've made around here. I got rid of all of those things. I got rid of the bad attitudes, the bad behavior, the bad desires, the bad things. I got rid of all of the greed, the lust, all the things. I've gotten rid of them. I don't understand why things aren't better around here. and this is hurting you and hurting you and hurting you. And it finally comes to a head and you realize, oh my goodness, it's still here. And then what do? You do the same thing over again. I got to get rid of it. Got to get rid of it. And how you've been playing that game for a long, 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 long time. So I'm inviting you to wholeness, which is actually quite different than what it is that you're accustomed to. Because what society has trained us to, apart in addition to the things that I mentioned earlier, such as being unaware and insensitive and so forth, is society has also taught us to be violent. Well, society didn't need to teach us to be violent. That was already there. We are, we came in with that. But society certainly has continued to encourage it because society is is also violent. Now you might disagree and say, "Oh no, 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 society isn't so violent. It's not like that at all." I mean, there's been major progress. It's like it's no longer socially acceptable in the United States, at least, to beat children. There's been improvements. Okay, I'll agree with that. But it's one of those things, sort of like what I was describing before, is that the same essence remains because we're trying to get rid of something. So you swap out, okay, now we don't spank the children, we don't whip the children, we don't hit the children. We just give them timeouts. And you might say, well, that's a big improvement. And on some level, I agree, but the problem is that the child doesn't know that because the fundamental approach is still one of violence because by violence, I mean essentially trying to get rid of something, punishment, saying, this is bad, this is wrong, you are bad, you are wrong. And you must get in line. You must do as we say. You must be as we want you to be. And if you don't, then all hell will be let loose upon you. Whether it's the whip or it's the timeout. And I do understand on some level there's an improvement, but on a more fundamental level, it hasn't really changed. And so this is all that society knows. This is all that the vast majority of humanity knows is violence. Which is interesting. I mean, I'm thinking uh, in the uh, Old Testament of the Bible, there's this law of eye for an eye, right? If that's how we do things. So that way it's fair. If you do this to me, I'll do the same to you. And that way you'll think twice about doing that to me. Because if you're like, well, if I do that to him, he'll do the same to me, and I don't want that, so best not to do it. So violence is used in order to try and restrain violence, which obviously doesn't work tremendously well. Then in the New Testament, Jesus gives a new approach. If if they slap your one cheek, then you turn the other cheek to them. You don't slap them back. It's not an eye for an eye. So 2,000 years, new message. I mean, and the similar messages, uh, similar messages from Many other traditions, similar message from the Buddha. So these messages have been there, but it seems like in general we haven't really caught on to that new way. And I'm actually proposing something even a little bit further, which is that we can actually we can actually operate from wholeness so that the very idea of violence itself is reshaped. So you have all of these impulses, all of these voices, all of these desires, all these fears, all these things that are in you. And they seem to be, as I said earlier, an agitation that seems to be a hindrance to wholeness from a superficial level. And so the normal thing that comes to many people is, well, I need a strategy that involves getting rid of all this stuff. And when I get rid of all that stuff, then I'll finally have wholeness. When I can get rid of all these thoughts, when I can get rid of all these impulses, when I can get rid of all these desires, when I can get rid of all these fears, when I can get rid of all the frustrations, when I can get rid of all the things, then finally I'll have wholeness. So I got to set about getting rid of all these things, which is fundamentally from a position of violence. It's self division. It's a civil war. So you've divided yourself and then you've pitted yourself against yourself. And who wins in that? I'm not sure, but I know who definitely does not win, and that would be you, right? If you divide yourself and pit yourself against yourself, then the one who definitely loses in that is you. Doesn't matter who wins, you lose. If you if you managed to, which you won't, but if you managed to defeat a part of yourself and finally get rid of it, you finally have exterminated it, then what a terrible loss. We don't see it that way usually, but only because, remember what I said, society has taught us to be unaware and insane. Society says if your left hand is doing things that you don't like, well, cut it off. Just cut off the left hand. If the left hand is doing things you don't like, cut it off. That's what society teaches us. And we try it and it hurts. And we say, well, I guess that's just how it goes. I guess life just hurts. I guess I got to just, how I got to do it. Because my left hand was doing things I didn't like. The only possible solution is to cut it off. See, the thing is that does your left hand do anything of its own accord? It doesn't do anything of its own accord. It does things according to how it's instructed. And so too with all aspects of yourself, all parts of yourself. They do as they're instructed. So you think about this, if you've given instructions. Now, I know you say, I don't remember giving any of these instructions, but just assume for a moment that you'd given instructions to all of these parts of yourself. You said, well, okay, to this part, you said, I want you to worry about money. I just want you to worry about money. You just keep worrying about money. You just keep worrying about it. And it says, okay, sure thing, boss. And you tell this other part, I want you to uh, just be vengeful. I want you to be really vengeful toward so and so. You just fixate on vengeance toward so and so. And it says, okay, sure. You told me to do that. I'm going to do it. You just have assigned all of these duties to all these parts. You say, I want you to do this, and I want you to do that, and I want you. And they say, sure. And they're very loyal. They will do it no matter what. Some of you have heard me tell the story about, or maybe you've heard it elsewhere, about the last Japanese soldier to surrender after World War II. It's been a while since I've refreshed my memory on this, so I might be slightly incorrect about the exact date, but I think it was so the Japanese surrendered in 1945, and uh, I think that the last Japanese soldier to surrender was actually I think it was in 1973. Because there was one, and I don't know why the last one to surrender was less famous than the second to last to surrender. But the second to last to surrender, I think, was 1972. But there had been a bunch of these soldiers. They had been, uh, deployed to uh, various locations outside of Japan. So this one who surrendered, I think, in 1972 had been, he was on he was in the Philippines, and he'd been carrying out guerrilla war ever since. He was the last of his buddies. There were a handful of them together there in the Philippines, and others had been captured or surrendered, but he was the last one there in the Philippines. And uh, the Japanese had been trying to uh, get these soldiers to surrender. They'd even gone so far as they'd gotten family members of the soldiers to write letters to the soldiers begging them to come home. And they had, I guess, made copies of them, and then they dropped them from airplanes all over the areas where they thought the soldiers were. They weren't sure if the soldiers were even, in many cases, they weren't even sure if the soldiers were still alive, but they had ideas of where they thought the soldiers were, and they dropped these letters from family members. And the soldiers, I guess, after they had been captured or surrendered, reported that they had not surrendered because they believed that it was all an enemy uh, deception. So, so these guys are out there committing atrocities. I mean, continuing to engage in war. But as far as they knew, they were just carrying out orders. As far as they knew, there was still a war going on, and they were just carrying out their orders out of loyalty and duty to their country. The way they got this guy to surrender, then they finally had gotten confirmation this guy was alive and where he was. They and who he was. They uh, located his former commanding officer, who's by now he's like an old guy, uh, put on a fair amount of weight. They get him a new uh, uniform that fits him, with all the medals and badges and everything, and they send him out to the Philippines to find this guy. And he says the way that they persuaded the soldier to surrender was his commanding officer said, "Thank you for your service. Here's your new orders." and that's what worked. So I propose that all these parts of yourself that you're trying to get rid of, or that you're trying to, well, let's just say get rid of, or that you're at war with, the parts of you that are afraid, the parts of you that are angry, the parts of you that are resentful, the parts of you that are all the various things. You say, oh, well, this part's, I don't know why I'm procrastinating on this. I shouldn't, this it's just this terrible, awful, bad part of me that's just ruining my life, sabotaging my life. And the normal strategy is to try to double down. Say, I'll just overpower the part. I'll win. I'll show this part. I'm not going to be defeated. And so that normal approach reinforces it's like these attempts. We're gonna we're gonna forcibly capture the soldiers. We're gonna drop these letters from family members and all these various things. The these parts of you, as far as they know, the last order they got from you was what they're doing, and all of your behavior, your antagonism toward these parts just reinforces the hostility. Because as far as these parts can determine, it seems like you've gone insane, right? I mean, if you tell the part, I want you to do everything you can to prevent me from achieving this thing that I otherwise want to achieve. For your own reasons, whatever that is, you decided, well, if I achieve that thing, then I might lose my friends, and so I have to make sure that I don't achieve it. And you tell that part, make sure that I don't achieve it because it's really important. I gotta keep my friends, and I'm afraid that if I achieve that thing, then I'll lose my friends. So your job is to make sure I never achieve that. So the part's just doing its job, but then you're going to war with it. You're saying, what the hell is wrong with this part of me? I don't know what's going on here. I mean, I need to achieve this thing. It's really important that I achieve this thing. And every time I try to achieve it, it's this gosh darn part of me that's just ruining my life, sabotaging my life. I got to get rid of it. So the part's like, well, the boss has gone insane. So violence doesn't work very well. Now, think back when you were a child, if you can remember what it was like when you were a child. Think back. And can you remember times, or at least just the sense of you just being yourself, doing your best just to be yourself, just to be totally authentic and real, and then someone coming along and scaring you? You remember being scared? Sometimes by mommy, sometimes by daddy, sometimes by other relatives, sometimes by neighbors, sometimes by teachers, and so forth and so on. You were sometimes scared. I mean, I'm going to ask a question, the answer to which I think is obvious, but I'll ask it anyway. Did you like that? Was that a nice thing? You want to have more of that in this world? But that's exactly what you've been doing to yourself. This, these parts of you are just they're just doing their thing. They're doing exactly what you instructed them to do. You don't remember giving the instruction, but that doesn't really matter in this case. They're doing exactly what you instructed them to do. And then you come along and you scare them. You say you're bad, bad. I say, how could I be bad? I don't understand. I'm just doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. How could I be bad? But you scare these parts with violence. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna get rid of you. I'm gonna overpower you. And why do you do that? It's because of what society's taught you. Because think about it. Why on earth would you do that? Doesn't actually make any sense. This is exactly what I was saying earlier about society teaches us to be insane because it doesn't make any sense to scare yourself, to be violent towards yourself, to be cruel towards yourself, to hurt yourself. It doesn't make any sense at all. But society trained you and think about how it did that. Think about why you justify the the things that you do to yourself. Why do you push yourself? Why do you why do you deny your basic needs sometimes? You do, don't you? Like you're tired and you say, I can't go to sleep yet. I gotta work harder. You're hungry and you say, well, I don't, I'm not gonna eat yet. I gotta push myself a little more. You you want something, you want to be able, you want to connect with another person. You want to say, I'm sorry. You want to say thank you. You want to say, I love you. You want to connect in these ways, but you don't. You deny yourself these things. You have these wholesome impulses. These are wholesome impulses, aren't they? Like self-care, connection, love, kindness. You have these wholesome impulses, but you deny yourself many of them, don't you? Why would you do that? It's insane, isn't it? But this is what society taught you. So think about it. Why do you do that? I don't know the answer for you, but I'm going to speculate. Maybe this will be accurate and maybe there'll be other answers that you can discover for yourself. But perhaps sometimes it has to do with progress. Does it ever have to do with progress? Like you got to get somewhere, you got to accomplish something, you got to do something. So you will harm yourself, abuse yourself, deny yourself wholesome impulses in the name of progress. I've got to get somewhere. I've got to get this done. It's very, very important. I've got to do it. But that's just something that society taught you. Or sometimes maybe it has to do with this idea of I don't deserve or I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough. So you're trying to prove something, trying to earn something. You know, I'll sleep when I've earned it. I'll allow myself to go pee when I've earned it. You ever do that one? Like, for God's sake, just go relieve yourself, you know? But sometimes you're like, no, I gotta just I gotta keep on sitting here trying to do this thing. I can't pause or interrupt even for like a minute. Or, you know, you can't say similar kind of thing without, you know, can't no, notice why would you not allow yourself to satisfy those wholesome impulses to connect, to love, to say you're sorry? It's similar kind of things, isn't it? It's like I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. There's something wrong with me. There's something bad about me. These are things that society taught you. And so you were taught to go to war with yourself. You were taught to forget all of yourself, to deny all of yourself, to be violent toward yourself. So where do you suppose all of, I mean, it's like I don't know, it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Did the violence of society come first, or did the violence of the individual come first? I don't know. But it goes round and round because society trains the individual to be violent, and then the individual contributes to the violence of society, which then trains the next generation to be violent, and so forth. So wholeness is not achieved through violence. Wholeness is not achieved by racing ahead, by progress, by getting to the finish line, by proving something. Wholeness isn't achieved by finally being able to say, aha, I'm good enough. All the things that we've been taught to pursue as like in this very serious way, as though that's the point of life. The point of life is I'm going to get all the things. I'm going to prove that I'm okay. I'm going to prove that I'm good enough. I'm going to prove that I'm worthy. I'm going to prove that I'm lovable. I'm going to finally get their approval and all these things. If you notice, that's much of the programming that's running, and it seems so important, so urgent, have to do these things. And therefore, we can justify continuing to deny ourselves wholesome impulses, to go to war with ourselves, to shame ourselves, to blame ourselves, to punish ourselves, and all of this stuff. But it's misguided because even if you were to succeed in those things, which you can't, you really can't. You can't, you're not going to be able to get rid of parts of yourself. You're not going to be able to succeed in, you can certainly punish yourself and deny yourself, but you can't get through that what it is that you're aiming for. You're not going to feel satisfied. You're not going to feel happy. You're not going to feel good. Because as I said earlier, if you divide yourself and then go to war with yourself, then the only thing that I can say for sure about that is that no matter who wins, you lose. It's guaranteed. If it's you versus you, whoever wins, you lose. And so none of the things that we've been taught to do, none of the approaches that we've been taught by society that involve trying to fix ourselves, trying to punish ourselves, trying to control ourselves, none of that is actually going to give us what we really want. Can't. Because because what you want is wholeness, which is what you are. But you're not going to get that by continuing down the path of delusion, which says, I'm going to get rid of these bad parts of myself. I'm going to finally dominate them. So, what could you do instead? I mean, hopefully, I've made the case that I've really uh, belabored the point. So, hopefully, it's clear that you're never going to win playing that same game that society's taught you. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this is really good news, just in case it wasn't clear. This is really good news. Because think about how much of your energy goes habitually toward this war. How much of your energy goes toward this war? How much of you wake up in the morning, and how long is it before you start having engaging in this war? For most people, if it's 30 seconds, you're lucky. If you're really lucky, you got 5 minutes, and if you've worked at it, if you've cultivated it, you might have an hour. But after that, the old habits, the old habits are gonna come in and assert themselves. Why? Because the that's that the habit is so powerful. The structure within which you're operating of I've got to, I've got to. So everything else you've already decided everything else is secondary. I've got to do these things. I've got to pay the bills. I've got to, uh, you know, do the dishes. I've got to clean the house. I've got to take the kids to school. I've got to go to work. I've got to, whatever it is, I've got to. I have to. I must. And you say, I really wish it was otherwise. Someday I'll have time for other things. I really wish that I had more time. But you know what? You'll never have the time until you choose it. Because otherwise, you are you're just feeding the the very thing that you're that's making you miserable every time you just continue to validate that idea of I got to progress. It's all about progress. Got to get somewhere. I'm not where I need to be, so I got to get there. And this is just the life that I have been given. So I guess I just gotta, you know. But you don't gotta, you really don't. You have choice. You could choose to start to question those things, and you could start to notice that the maybe the reason why you feel bad is because of the violence that you're doing to yourself. I mean, look, I get it. There's things out there that add some challenge. I really do understand. I get it. The economic pressures, the social pressures, all the stuff. I understand those pressures are there, but you have choice, and you haven't for the most part you haven't acknowledged that choice consciously. You have not acted upon that choice consciously because you've just been caught up in the same habits, the habits that assert themselves straight away. You wake up and then the habits take over. You say, oh, really love to have, I'd really love to have the time for something else, but unfortunately, I've got all of these things that I have to do. And as soon as you believe that, then you're lost. Because when you believe you've got to do these things, then you've bought into the idea that you not only do you have to, but you have to do them in the way that's familiar. Because you say, well, I don't have time to do any of this any differently. I mean, I'd love to be able to slow down and bring more conscious awareness to all of it, but I don't have time. I mean, look, I've got a bunch of debt that I've got to pay off. Oh, look, I'm falling behind in all of these things, It's like I've got all these things. I'm I had all of these dreams and visions for my children, and I'm behind on all of these things, I just don't have time to do things differently. Just got to keep on mindlessly plowing forward, doing things the old way, which is making me miserable. So, you could begin to question those things and really question it deeply. Just start to notice. So here's what I would recommend. Uh, you could start, if you're willing, you could start every evening before you go to bed. You could do two things. One is you could review the the day that's just completed and ask yourself, what did I what did I what new positive habit, what uh habit of bringing more conscious awareness did I succeed with today? No matter how small, celebrate it. You know, there was that time in when I was in traffic and I had the familiar thoughts of and feelings of, oh God, I'm going to be late and my life is ruined. And I just had a moment where I just was consciously aware. I slowed down. I allowed myself to relax, allowed myself to become aware of my breathing. I allowed myself to notice that I'm actually safe right now. I allowed myself to notice what other options are available to me. And hey, that would be a wonderful success, right? So you could just acknowledge and celebrate that and give thanks. You think about, how many days have I been alive? I don't know, thousands of days, right? You've been alive for thousands of days. And you say, for thousands of days, I did the same thing, mindlessly doing violence toward myself, hurting myself with these beliefs of, if I this shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't be this way. This is bad. Everything's bad. Nothing's going to work out. Oh God, it's all going to be awful. It's going to be disastrous. I've been hurting myself in this way for thousands of days. And miraculously today, I had, I was gifted this moment of presence where I actually was able to tune into other options. Celebrate that. Give thanks. Okay. And no matter how small, find something because that will allow you to grow that. It's like you planted a seed, you want to tend to it. So it's not about being self-congratulatory, like look at me, isn't amazing, puffing yourself up. It's not like that. It's tending to the seed. It's just giving thanks, noticing, oh, this is a miracle, this taking place in my life. Thank you. I'm so grateful. Uh, and by noticing that and acknowledging that, you make space for more of that in your life. Because then the next time that happens, whatever, like I gave this hypothetical scenario of being in traffic and thinking I'm late. So the next time that that happens, you're more likely to, again, have that presence that allows you to slow down and notice the other choices so that you don't have to hurt yourself. That's one thing. So this is what I'm proposing in the evening before you go to bed. This does not take long. Please don't make it take long. Because if you make it take long, then it turns into this whole thing and then it's not sustainable and then you'll give it up. Right? So the shorter it is, the better because then it becomes something that you can really sustain. Then you don't make excuses, say, well, I won't do it tonight, but I promise I'll do it tomorrow. But tonight I can't do it because I don't have enough time because this, to get into the right feeling state and have all of the wonderful things that's going to take me at least an hour and I don't have time for that. No, this is like, it takes a minute. Okay. Because you can always find a minute. And if you can't find a minute, at least 30 seconds. And if you can't find 30 seconds, 10 seconds. You can always find the time as long as you're willing to allow yourself that. So that's the one part of it. The second part of it is Set the intention and just imagine tomorrow morning when I wake up, I will be aware of myself. I will be aware of my options. I will be aware of my wholeness. Okay, just set that intention. Imagine it. Just again, doesn't take long. 10 seconds. It's sufficient. Just do that. Because if you do that, you prime yourself so that it's much more likely that it will actually happen. Now, will it happen? We can't guarantee it, but it becomes much more likely. So if it doesn't happen, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't say, oh, I didn't do a good enough job. Oh, what's wrong with me? No, 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 no. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it's fine. You just are are establishing the habit. It's like when learning to ride a bicycle. If the first time you don't learn to ride the bicycle when you're attempting, it's okay. It's totally fine. You don't need to beat yourself up about it. Oh, what a failure I am. Oh God, all of my friends are riding bicycles. I'll never ride a bicycle. There's something wrong with me. I'm a loser. No, you don't need to do that. You just say, okay, I, I, I attempted it. I learned something from this. I'll try it again tomorrow. So it's the same with this. So you set the intention. Tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'll be aware of myself. I'll notice the options that are available to me. And that's it. And then in the morning, when you wake up, you could um, offer yourself something that will make it more likely that you'll remember. I don't know what that might be. It could be uh, you. So a pattern interrupt is helpful. So you have a pattern, whether you're aware of it or not. When you wake up in the morning, you have a routine. You might not be consciously aware of what that routine is, but you do have a routine. So that if you uh, allow that routine to take over, and that routine does not include you having the presence to be aware of yourself and notice other options that are available to you, then guess what? Probably not gonna happen that way. So if you do something purposefully to interrupt that pattern, to introduce the reminder, the opportunity, then it's much more likely that you will succeed in that regard. And so that could be like having a note to yourself placed somewhere that along your path of your morning routine, like on the bathroom mirror or on the the door to the cupboard where your coffee mug is or whatever it is. You put something there that will serve as a reminder. It doesn't have to be a note, but I'm just giving that as an example. And here too, make this something you don't need to take a lot of time with it, but and you can pair it with something that you already do, brushing your teeth, making coffee, whatever the thing is. You can you can do this at the same time so you don't make an excuse to yourself and say, "Oh, I don't have time." No, you have time because you can do it alongside something you're already doing. And here's what I propose is in the morning, set the intention. Today, my intention is to be aware of myself, to notice all of the impulses that arise as parts of myself, and to welcome all these parts of myself into wholeness. And how might you do that? How might you welcome all parts of yourself into wholeness. So the first thing is just to actually be aware. So it's just, so that's why I recommend you set this intention in the morning. Today, I will be aware of myself. I will be aware of all of these impulses and I will welcome them into wholeness. So setting that intention is really useful because again, that will prime you. It doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, and let's be honest, you're probably not gonna pull that off 100% on day one. If in fact on day one, it might happen that you set the intention in the morning and then you get to the evening and in the evening you check in with yourself and you're like, oh man, gee whiz, I seem to have totally forgotten all day long. That's okay. It's totally okay. In the spirit of this whole thing, please understand, it's totally okay. This is not about something to beat yourself up about and say, oh, I'm a failure. What a failure I am. I see I can't even do this. No, this is so it's just to establish the habit. It's just to establish this wholesome habit of taking care of yourself, of loving yourself, of being inclusive of all of yourself. Because that's wholeness. So whatever happens, it's totally okay. You just continue in this way, and what will start to happen is you'll start to notice throughout the day. You'll start to notice these things. You'll notice, ooh, isn't that interesting? Here's this, here's this fear. Here's this anger. Here's this resentment. Here's this, whatever it is. And you start to notice. And you start to notice also the way in which you immediately reflexively start to go to war with it, to suppress it, try to suppress it or deny it or ignore it or talk down to it. And instead, all you are all I'm proposing is you just say welcome. And really, honestly, like intend that. So think of all of these parts of yourself, the parts of you that are afraid, the parts of you that are jealous, the parts of you that are feel like victims, the parts of you that are angry. Think of them just like little children and be willing to really be generous and compassionate. See them not only as little children, but for a moment, allow yourself to put yourself in the position of that little child. Because think about when you were a little child and those moments when, like I was talking about earlier, when adults would sometimes scare you. And there might have been lots of different situations and scenarios in which adults scared you. Some of them, though, would have been situations in which you really had no idea that how you were being, what you were doing was that other people were perceiving that in a negative way. You didn't know. You weren't doing the things trying to upset anybody. That wasn't your conscious intention. You weren't just thinking to yourself, ha 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 ha, look at how I'm going to upset these people. Boy, won't that be fun? No, you didn't do that, did you? I mean, the thing is, we're just not, we're, we're not able to think like that, actually, because what we're really thinking about is ourselves, which is totally fine. We're just thinking about, to the degree that we're thinking at all, it's like, I'm hurting, or I'm confused, or I'm disappointed, or I'm sad. And we're just doing the best we can with that. And then other people think, What's wrong with this child? This child is causing my life to be miserable. My life would be better if this child would just shut up. My life would be better if this child would just be out of my sight. My life would be better if this child would behave in the ways that I want this child to behave. So, so those, think about what it was like to be that child and to be confronted by these adults who were scolding us, punishing us, confusing us, scaring us. And think about how innocent you were. Just notice in your heart how innocent you were. And these parts of you are just like that. So you've learned to divide yourself into the the child part and the adult part. And the adult part is saying, what's wrong with this child? It's ruining my life. But then the child part of you is hurt, is confused, is scared. So when you notice that these things happen in your day-to-day experience, have compassion for that part of you. See that part as that innocent child. And think about when you were a child, how different it would have been if in those situations the adults would have done it differently. Like, what if instead the adult would have said, with you could tell they really cared, they really meant it. And they said, "It's honey, I can see that you seem to be feeling something that's hard for you. Let's take a little bit of time and figure that out together. Let's just take a little bit of time and I care about you. Whatever it is that you're needing right now, I want to help you with that." None of this, you know, mommy's got to get to the office. So just, stuff it all down and get your stuff packed up so that I can get you to school because mommy doesn't have any time for this. Instead, if it was, I have the time for you, there's space for you, there's time for you. So be willing to offer that to these parts of yourself when you notice these things that come up. Now, again, it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to be perfect with that, whatever perfect would mean. Probably ever, but certainly on day one, right? So don't don't put that unrealistic demand on yourself to say, I've got to be perfect. From the day one, I've got to have absolute compassion and love and patience and all the time and space in the world for all parts of myself. I've got to let go of all of my false agendas. I've got to let go of all of the false programming that society is overlaid, that all of the violence. I've got to let go of all of that absolutely from day one. Forget about that. Don't put that kind of unrealistic pressure on yourself. It's just an intention to start to work with and be patient with yourself. And it's absolutely okay if you uh whatever happens with this. Just I'm just proposing continue to work with these intentions and see how that changes your life. It's probably not going to dramatically change your life overnight. Could. Probably not, though. So if you have the expectation that it should, or that it should look a certain way, or if you think if this is like a strategy, say, okay, fine, I'll do this, Joey, uh, so long as the money shows up by next week, or so long as my husband or my wife or my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whoever starts to treat me the way I want to be treated or whatever. Like, no, no, no. Let go of that stuff. If you're willing, if you want to see the miracles that this can work in your life, then a key word here is gentleness. Again, this is like it's the opposite to what society has taught us. So if it doesn't come easily, that's okay. If you notice how much violence there is in your programming, don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed or disturbed by that. It's you're we're all starting exactly where we are with whatever the programming is, with whatever the violence is. This is not about becoming a saint. It's not about being perfect. It's just about starting where you are and taking small, consistent steps that allow you to make the changes that you want so that you can genuinely live from wholeness more and more. Because the violence uh, is makes us rigid, makes us fragile. So we're so accustomed to that way. We're so accustomed to this rigidity and tension. I've got to be good. I've got to get it all together. I've got to perform. I've got to. There's so much pressure and rigidity and tension. So the that makes us, as I say, very fragile. So we it just feeds into this cycle of impatience, urgency, which creates more fear, more anger, more violence, more rigidity, more tension. Round and round it goes. Vicious cycle. So gentleness, patience, curiosity, genuine interest. Uh, these things form a virtuous cycle. And it will, it may seem initially to be uh, threatening, uncomfortable. So you're just starting where you are. And I'm just proposing if you just set these intentions and just work with them as best you can, then you will notice, as long as you persist in a way that's sustainable and in which you are sincerely and honestly remembering about gentleness. It's a lot. It's a lot of things to work with. But as long as you do that to the best of your ability, not in an unreasonable way, like just to the best of your ability, wherever you're at. So it might be a really small amount that you can give to it at first, and that's okay. As long as you are consistent and persistent with that, I can guarantee that you will see positive results and that they will grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. How long will that take? I don't know. I mean, it does, but but I don't personally, I don't see an alternative to that that seems palatable for me because the really the main alternative from my point of view is just to continue with the same vicious cycle. So it's sort of like in many things in life where when we've gotten ourselves, when we're in a vicious cycle, the to begin to transform that into a virtuous cycle at first can seem daunting because the vicious cycle often has so much momentum and it seems as though it dominates everything. It seems like that's the only way, and to do anything any differently seems impossible and or too trivial. You say, "Oh God, Joy, what good will it do me just to set this intention every evening and every morning? That's not going to be enough to put a dent in this terrible, vicious cycle of violence that's taken over my life." And I mean, hopefully you don't feel that way, but sometimes it can seem that way. And I, it's like, think of the Grand Canyon. So if you've been to the Grand Canyon, then you have firsthand experience of that. If you've never been there, maybe you've seen a picture or a video of the Grand Canyon. If you've never seen a picture or a video of the Grand Canyon, you could easily find one on the internet. And it's a very large canyon, very large canyon. Now, I don't know absolutely this is true, but the story goes, and it seems fairly plausible, that that canyon was formed or is being formed, continually formed by a trickle of water. Trickle of water. So at at first, if you imagine, if you go back, I don't know how long it takes, millions of years, billions of years, I have no idea. You go back, you could imagine before that canyon was formed, then you just see this little trickle of water. And somebody says, one day there's going to be a Grand Canyon here. And you say, you're kidding. Come on. It's a trickle of water. Look at all this rock. So it can seem at first as though it's insignificant. This setting these simple intentions. You say, that's not going to do it. That's not enough. But put it to the test. And I give you my word, it won't take billions of years. It won't take millions of years. It won't even take millions of days. I don't know how many, I don't know how long a million seconds is. It's possible it might take millions of seconds before you notice. But it won't take that long before you'll start to actually see the results. You'll actually start to see evidence. You'll start to notice that it's just the new habit is starting to form where instead of the tendency toward violence, instead of the tendency toward dividing yourself and going to war with yourself, you'll start to notice that this tendency toward inclusivity, toward wholeness is there. There's more that can be done at that point, but start with this. Start with just these simple intentions and notice what happens. So that's what I wanted to say. I'll just say this one more thing, uh, which is that this is so. My intention, starting from last week, is to for on each Monday to share with you what I perceive are the most important, most valuable things that can uh, positively change your life, that are very accessible to, I think, everybody, if not most people. I mean, certainly anybody who's here. So uh, you can do with that what you will, but that's my intention. So if you uh, believe that what I'm, if you believe that I have something of value to share, which I assume you do if you're here, then just know that that's my intention is that starting from last week, each Monday for the foreseeable future, my intention is to share with you those things which I perceive are the of most potential benefit and value for positive transformation in your life. And in order of priority. So don't think that you have to work with everything that I share. Uh, what I shared last week, I believe is the highest priority, the thing that is most useful. Your mileage might vary. So that I'm not saying that you have to agree with me, but I'm offering these things in this order at this time for this reason. Uh, and so what I'm sharing today is from my point of view right now, it's the, let's say, the second most important thing. So if you have time and space for two things, then I my proposal is work with what I shared last week, and then secondly, what I shared this week. If you only have time for one thing, then I recommend that you start with what I shared last week, unless you prefer to start with what I shared this week, because your mileage may vary. So I'm not here to be a dictator in your life. I mean, I'm just here to offer options. You take all of this and do with it what makes sense to you. But I just wanted to share that with you so that you understand where I'm coming from with all this. And because I want you to understand that even though uh, this may, I don't know how it strikes you, but for some people, this might strike some people as uh, like not that important. I mean, and I can know that, or I believe that because I've gotten that feedback from people. Because this isn't the first time I've shared this kind of information. I've shared this kind of information about the importance of being inclusive of all parts of yourself, of having a loving, compassionate attitude towards all parts of yourself. I've shared this information many times, and even with people who I've worked with fairly extensively, people who participate in some of my programs, who've been participating in some of my programs for multiple years. I, I know that I get feedback from them even now where they still are skeptical about the value of this. But my invitation to you is if you believe that I have something of value to offer, then if you have the time and space for it, which I imagine you probably do, since I'm really proposing that this is a small amount of time that's required to implement this, put it to the test. Put to the test what it is that I've suggested today, because it literally only takes a few minutes of your time each day in order to do this, and find out if you do this consistently for 30 days as a starting point. I'm not saying you should limit it to 30 days, but if you do this for 30 days, just a minute or two in the evening, a minute in or just a minute in the morning, and then just start to notice throughout the day as you do, as happens naturally. Don't try to force anything. Uh, for a minimum of 30 days, really sincerely put that to the test and find out. Because I'm proposing that you will notice that it starts to work miracles in your life. You'll start to actually notice that you're operating from wholeness more instead of unnecessary division and inner conflict and warfare. You'll actually start to notice more inner harmony, congruence, more trust within yourself. A lot of people, I said I wasn't going to say, but I'll say one more thing. A lot of people uh, are preoccupied with safety. And I understand why. But this is like the underlying thread for a lot of people in their lives is safety, 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 safety. They're looking for safety. I need safety, 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 safety. It's always about safety. They don't feel safe. They feel insecure and they think the remedy is I need to feel safe. Well, if you can recognize that, and I'm not saying that's the only way in which what I've shared today is useful, but it's one way in which this can be really useful. So think about if you're at war within yourself, how safe do you think you're going to feel? Not very safe, right? I mean, like if you're at war with yourself, you're going to constantly feel insecure. So if you are somebody, and again, this is not the only way in which what I've shared today would be useful, but in the case in which if you can relate to this sense of chronic insecurity, looking for security as the remedy, constantly looking for how can I be safe? How can I be safe in the world? How can I be safe in relationship? How can I be safe financially? How can I be safe with my health? How can I be safe? If you're looking for that, then I really encourage you to work with what I've shared today and what I shared last week. Um, do that for 30 days and just notice what change takes place for you. I'm not guaranteeing that if you work with this if you have this habit of insecurity and you work with this for 30 days, that that's going to be completely changed. It may or may not, but I am fairly certain that you'll notice some significant positive change in regard to that, which would probably encourage you to continue to work with this. Uh, so now I'm pretty sure that's what I wanted to say about this for today. If anybody has any questions that you want to put in the chat, I will happily respond to those before wrapping up today. And if nobody has anything, that's absolutely fine as well. But I'm happy to stay on and respond to things in the chat if there's anything that is relevant. So I'll just look through the chat here. Uh, just seeing some comments from earlier. So this person says that the central theme in my life lately is wholeness. It's inclusive of all my other values. Yeah, awesome. Um, okay, so somebody says, with regards to the inner process, I want to ask a question. For example, I don't like a place I don't like to be in. I allow the feelings, but my mind is still thinking things. My mind still tells me it's not a nice place, etc. Is this the story you talk about, and the meaning we give to experiences we don't like? And how do we stop this or be non-resistant to change the conditioning? Maybe I have not yet fully understood this. Do I allow the feeling but stop the analyzing slash story my mind is creating? Um, so there are a lot of different approaches, but in the context of what I've shared today, what I would recommend is to notice that uh, so so there's let's say there's a part of you which would like the freedom and options to be able to be in places such as this particular place. Okay. And then there's another part of you that is bringing up this concern that says, it's not a nice place. So, so this part of this, so one part of you wants the freedom to be in this place. Another part of you says, I don't want to be here. I don't like this. It's not a nice place. I don't want to be in this place. I want to go somewhere else. So this would be, uh, so in this particular case, it seems like the tendency is to um, identify more as the part that wants the freedom to be in the place and then to uh, reject the part that does not want to, the part that has the objection to being in the place. And my proposal in this context is to welcome that part that does not want to be in the place. So the part says, I don't want to be in this place. This is not a nice place. And just to say to that part, whether in words or just the essence, the attitude being something that could be expressed, such as, uh, thank you for being here. Thank you for expressing this view. Uh, you're, yeah, I welcome you, and just allow that part to be here. You could invite that part if it seems appropriate. You can invite that part to tell you more about. This goes a little deeper than what I shared today, but you could go through a process where you ask the part, um, what's important about not being here, or what's important um, uh, about identifying that this place is not nice. Or you could phrase it as, what do you want instead? Right. So if this part says, I don't like this place, I don't want to be in this place, it's not a nice place, you could say, thank you for being here. I welcome you. Uh, and really, as I said earlier, view the part as, with compassion and love, and have patience, like this is a child, like it's the child that you were. Really feel into that so that you can have genuine compassion for this part. So just remember what it was like when you were a child, when you had some feelings, maybe you felt uncomfortable, and you felt maybe disempowered, maybe that you were told, just shut up, you have to be here, but you didn't feel good in that place. So whether you remember a situation specifically like that or not, you could at least remember, you could imagine what that might have been like. And then from being willing to put yourself in that position, that can allow you to have compassion for this part of yourself, and just uh, have, from that place of compassion, have that genuine open-heartedness where you really truly welcome this part. So it's not just a strategy. It's not just like, okay, fine, I'll play the game. I'll welcome the part. You're welcome to be your part. It's not like that. You have to really genuinely have that open heart. And it's okay if you feel impatient at the same time, right? So like there might be parts of you that still have, they're like, oh, come on, I don't want to do this. I don't have time. It's urgent. I got to do other stuff. And you say, okay, fine. So you welcome those parts too. And so you welcome those parts, that if there are parts that are impatient, or you say, I welcome you too, and one at a time. So I'll get to you in just a moment. And uh, just be with the part that says, I don't like this place. It's not a nice place. And you say, okay, I'm going to be with you. Thank you for being here. I'm making space for you now. I'm taking time now. Even if there are other parts of me that have impulses of impatience and so forth, I'll get to those parts. I welcome those parts too, but one at a time. So you just be fully with this part. So I don't like this place. It's not a nice place. And you just, from that place of openness and compassion, then just notice, like I said earlier, there's like a genuine curiosity. You care about this part now. It's not about, oh, this part's just inconvenient. Why is this part causing me problems? I don't like, just shut up already. I'm in this place. Why are you making a big deal of it? I don't care. I don't want to hear about how it's not a nice place. I need to be in this place. Instead, it's like, okay, I hear you. I'm here with you. I hear you. I'm curious now to know. Tell me more about what's going on. What's important about not being in this place? Or what would you like instead of this place? And then what's important about that? So you're just really inviting this part to share with you, and to help to identify, what is at the heart of it. What does this part really want? And and when you engage with the part in this way, then you can find, uh, like I've I often say new options. You have so many more options available to you now in your life than you did at an earlier time in your life, but your the programming still has you operating as though you have limited options. And so by taking the time from openness and compassion with curiosity, you start to open up things so that you can start to discover, well, what are my options actually that are available to me now that allow me to accomplish what it is that this part really wants? And maybe you find through that there are maybe the best solution is to go to a different place. That's okay. If you discover that that's genuinely true. Um, but then if that's true, then there's coherence in that. It's not like you're like, oh God, I gotta go to another place. I don't really want to go to another place. It's inconvenient. It's congruent. Uh, on the other hand, maybe you discover that it's the place is actually not really the issue. It's about something else. And when you discover what that something else is, then you can discover the options for that. I mean, sometimes just the willingness to be compassionate with this part of yourself is enough. Sometimes that's really what's needed or wanted. It's just like, oh, there's space for me. Sometimes that's all that's really needed. So that's what I would recommend based on the context of today. Um, the same person elaborates, says, if I see something or hear something, my mind starts telling me a story or adding a label to the experience. Is this resistance? How do I go about this? Do I allow the analysis of the situation? Um, well, so I could think about a time that think about some experience that you've had, whether it's a specific experience or even an imaginary experience that you can feel into now, where you uh, where it was an experience of call it presence, where there's a kind of timelessness involved in it, whether that's like you know uh, sometimes moments in nature can offer that, like a sunset or a sunrise or being at the ocean or anything, any kind of it could be anything, it could be like being present with the flower or with the butterfly or the breeze or whatever it is. So if you've had that kind of experience, or maybe it's an experience of, it could have been a meditative experience, or it could have been a sexual experience, or so many different types of experiences. It could have been a just totally ordinary kind of experience, but it just struck you in this extraordinary way where there's a timelessness to it. And notice those kinds of experiences. Is there in the moment when you're actually having that experience, is there an analysis? Is there a story that's going on? When you're really there with the sunset and you're not trying to, you're not telling yourself, oh, this is such an amazing sunset. Oh, I should be having a really wonderful, expansive experience. Not that, but instead when it's just like actually this timeless, expansive experience, just like one with the sunset. Okay. So there's not actually a story or analysis that's going on in that moment. And so, in contrast, uh, when there is analysis or story going on, it's because, so says I, that we're trying to understand or figure something out so that we can get a sense of control or security. How do I control this? How do I protect myself? How do I get something? How do I get rid of something? So those are the motivations for the story and the analysis. So is that resistance? Kind of. Um, and there again, as with the previous question, you say, because you say, how do I go about this? Uh, there are a lot of different ways that you could go about this, but in the context of what I shared today, what I would recommend is the same thing as I mentioned in response to the previous question, which is just to notice that so there's some part of you that is t telling a story, labeling, analyzing, and uh, and that part has is doing that for a reason. It's doing that for there's a positive intention in that. That this is an underlying thing to keep in mind with all of these, and in general, with whenever these impulses arise, it's because this part of you that is the impulse or that is the uh, carrier or holder of that impulse is uh, has a positive intention. It's trying to achieve something, whether that's I mean, ultimately, it would be something like happiness, peace, freedom, joy, love, wholeness. Um, and in intermediate steps, like not the ultimate aim, but there could be strategic level steps that would be looking for security, protection, control, things like that. And so that's the positive intention of this part. So it has a positive intention, but usually we are our knee-jerk reaction is one of violence, impatience. This part is just ruining my life. Here we go again. I can't believe this is happening. I'm late. Why is this happening now? Why, when will my life be work out better? We just have these knee-jerk violent reactions like this part is the problem. And so what I'm proposing here is that you instead have this gentleness, choose gentleness, compassion, openness, curiosity, patience, love. Perceive this part as this innocent child who has a positive intention, and then just hold that space with that intention of compassion for this part to allow for that part to express its positive intention, and then invite uh, the resources that will allow for other options that would probably be more uh, harmonious for you. So if you're noticing that your mind is telling you a story or adding a label to an experience, then you could just pause and just let that part of you know from a place of compassion and love. Thank you for being here. I'm here with you now. Uh, just allow that part um, to be welcome and be curious about it. Allow it to express itself, and but without any force. So it's not like, okay, come on, tell me already what's going on. What's your positive intention? Let's hurry it up, because that won't work. It's just hold that space. Uh, Somebody wants to know in a nutshell, what was the lesson last week? I missed it. You can find it on YouTube. I mean, I'm not gonna uh, rob you of it by summarizing it, because it's like that'd be like, you know, reading the Cliff's Notes of Hamlet or something like that. Not, I mean, not that I'm saying that what I that my talks are the equivalent of Shakespeare or something like that. But it wouldn't really do it justice. Uh, but you can find it on YouTube. I posted it on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2026. So you can find it. Okay, so somebody says, is shame a form of violence to the self, please? I'm specifically thinking about bodily shame. Yes, I mean, of course. So, um, so shame, it's like, so there's, okay, so there's several things that get conflated oftentimes. One thing would be how, let's say, your sense of vitality, vitality and capacity, physical capacity. So you uh, may desire to have a high level, let's say, of physical capacity and vitality. You may or may not. I'm not suggesting you should, but I mean, it's a possibility. Many people might desire to have a high level of physical vitality and capacity. In other words, feeling good in the body, physically feeling good. Um, and that has nothing to do whatsoever with image, right? It has nothing whatsoever to do with image. How your feeling of vitality and physical capacity has nothing whatsoever to do with your image. Um, and then there is is your image. And so the now your image uh is I can't I don't think oh well so you're there's a little bit of overlap in reality, but and this is I think in part how it can get easily confused because your sense of physical vitality and capacity does involve a mapping internally of your uh, body, internal mapping. So, for example, uh, can you locate in space without even looking at it? Can you get a sense in space of where your right index finger is? Can you get a sense of feeling where your right index finger is? And for most people, you'd probably say yes. If not, then just note that might be interesting to be able to sense in where your right index finger is. That just note that possibility exists, and that might possibly be connected in some capacity to your sense of physical vitality and capacity. So because of that mapping um, and how that is connected, I guess there's some tendency for overlap of image of the self, or I should say, image of the body, and uh, and uh, and a sense of physical vitality and capacity. But apart from that, let's say judgments about the image have nothing to do with, in reality, with anything that really matters. And those judgments are completely arbitrary, mostly. I'm just thinking maybe there's some things that are not in. I think there are underlying th things that can give rise to these confusions. Because as I'm saying this, I'm realizing, well, there probably are uh, like certain underlying reasons for um, judgments, like probably in selection of mates, for example, we're probably predisposed to having preference for a mate who has two eyes, because two eyes probably offers for humans, because we're wired up for by whatever we call this two-eyed vision, where there's probably an evolutionary advantage, and therefore we probably have a predisposition to selecting mates who have two eyes, or two hands, or 2 feet. So and I'm not saying that people with 2 feet or two hands or two eyes are better than people with one. I'm just saying there probably is an underlying uh, bias towards selecting mates who who meet certain basic criteria, but and I think that might be the basis for the confusion. But apart from that, whether the person has long cheeks or round cheeks, or long teeth or short teeth, or they have blue eyes or green eyes, or they're this height or that height, or they've got their belly is this big or that big, or they've got whatever, for the most part, within certain parameters, like doesn't it's all just arbitrary and nonsense, really. I mean, and think about this: in different cultures uh have very different ideas of what is attractive and beautiful. Some cultures, you got to have the lip. You got to have the big. They do the body modification. Have the big lip, and some they've got to have the long necks. They put the rings around the neck, and in at one time in China, it was all had to have the feet had to be small, so they would bind the feet, and um, and apparently in modern American culture, what's attractive for women is that they look like perpetually like 16-year-olds. And, so it's like, uh, but look at uh, art depictions of what was considered attractive in ancient Greece, for example, and compare that with what people think is attractive today, and you'll see, oh, it's different. So these are largely arbitrary. So shame around the body is long story short, definitely self-violence. Definitely self-violence. I mean, it toward yourself. If it's shaming your own body, it's self-violence. If it's shaming somebody else's body, that's violence toward others. Um, and there's a lot of that, a tremendous amount of that. Uh, so, but it is definitely violence. All right. So another person says, when you just spoke about the question about mind telling us a story slash adding a label to the experience, isn't the SLIPS method useful? And with the SLIPS method, is the stop part, does the stop part mean stop the thinking, which is the inner process? Can you give an example of how you use the SLIPS method, please? Well, so it's definitely related to what I'm sharing today, uh, in as much as it involves just becoming conscious. I mean, the the conscious part is is the main thing, because if you want change, you've if you want meaningful change, you've got to be conscious in order to introduce that. Otherwise, it's just what I refer to as rearranging the furniture. You can produce what seems to be change in a mindless fashion. You can just brute force make change, because I mean that's happening all day long everywhere. People are brute force producing change. Like most social conformity is producing change through brute force. It's not conscious. There's not conscious awareness, but um, does that produce positive change? I would say no. So if you want positive change, then I would suggest it's necessary to be conscious, and to be conscious, slow down, because it's sort of like a hack, if you will, that in order so your unconscious you're able to with your unconscious, how do I say this? So let's say you have conscious and unconscious, these two different domains, from which you can function, and each has their value and benefit. So uh, it's not that unconscious is bad. It has many benefits. As I've often pointed out, almost everything, well, everything except for one thing at a time, is uh, unconscious. Because so if unconscious was bad, then and the answer was to get rid of unconscious. I'm laughing because that's more of the old way of thinking, is like we've got good and bad and we got to get rid of bad. But if unconscious was bad and we were to get rid of that, then all we'd be left with would be what's conscious, which is only one thing at a time. So unconscious is everything other than the one thing that you could be potentially conscious of at any given moment. So unconscious is everything else. So everything that is uh, happening that you're not conscious of, or that you're not consciously doing, is unconscious. That includes your all of the bodily functions, your heart beating, your digestion, all the things that are happening in the body, all the things that are happening around you, your ability to walk, your ability to talk, your ability to read and write, and all of that is unconscious. And so that's useful potentially. But um, when those patterns that are dominating the unconscious are not optimal for you, when they're not giving you optimal results, then it's desirable to introduce change to that. And if you want to change that, you need to do that consciously. So, uh, and I'm pointing this out because unconscious is uh, has the capacity, and I'm pretty sure it's infinite capacity for simultaneous activity. So I believe, I don't think there's any limit to how much can occur simultaneously, unconsciously. Conscious can only do one thing at a time. You can only, this is why, um, if there's, this is why, for example, if you're really focused on something, you'll even sometimes, if you're walking and then you're really focusing on something, you'll actually find that you stop walking in order to really focus on whatever you're trying to focus on. If you're having a conversation and you're trying to focus on something, you'll stop the conversation so that you can focus on the thing. You might even find you hold your breath when you're trying to really focus. So it really demands to be very conscious of something, demands a tremendous amount of focus. And you can really only do that one thing at a time. All the other things that are completely unconscious can continue to happen, but it suggests to me that the things that, like, there may be elements of breathing, for example, that are still involving some conscious, well, small amounts of conscious attention. And so when we try to do something else fully consciously, those elements of breathing, which are still involving some little bits of conscious attention, probably are why we would hold our breath. I'm speculating there, but for whatever reason, we can see evidence that other things sometimes need to stop in order to bring adequate attention to the one thing. And uh, so conscious attention is like that. Um, so other things are unconscious is generally fast. Conscious is generally slow. So like, and so you can test this out. If you know how to walk, then walk, you can test it out by walking and then slow down your walking and keep slowing it down. And at a certain point, you'll notice that there's a certain threshold and it's going to be unique to each person, but once you've slowed it down enough, you'll notice your whole state changes and that all of your attention goes to the act of walking once it's slowed enough. So slowing down, the point, long answer, but the point is this: slowing down sufficiently will make that shift to conscious attention. So whatever it is you want to make conscious, if you slow down enough, then you become conscious. You cannot help but become conscious. How much you have to slow down depends on a lot of variables, but if you slow down enough, you cannot help but become conscious. So that's the key there, is to slow down so that you become conscious. So it's not necessarily about, you ask, is it about stopping the thinking? No, it's, it's, I mean, if you try to stop thinking, and if you try to stop thinking, then your focus is on thinking and trying to stop it. So you have to first think and then stop the thinking. But instead, what you can do is slow down enough. So internally, if you just slow down enough, like if you just become curious enough about what is happening internally, if you just want to watch what's happening, and with a lot of curiosity about what is this, what is happening. So you're not trying to stop something, but you're very curious about what this is. And you keep slowing that down, or you could think about it like zooming in on what's happening. What is this inner process? You want to really start to, or like, it's like expanding that so you can see more and more and more, observe more detail. Keep doing that until there's a certain threshold, and then you become conscious. Once you become conscious, then then in a sense, I mean, that's really what that SLIPS method is it's, but it's specifically focused on the inner process by which you have habitually generated whatever the experiences that you don't want. You could use it on experiences that you do like as well, but usually I found it helpful to use that with experiences that one does not like. So, but the essential ingredient with that process and with what I'm sharing today is the conscious awareness. So if you slow down enough, so there's a habit in the context of today, what I'm proposing is there's a habit of this vicious cycle of violence, impatience, where we say, I've got to, I don't have time for this. I've just got to plow ahead. I would love to change my life, but I'm late for work. I would love to change my life, but I've got to pay the bills. I would love to be able to do something differently, but I don't have time because it's too urgent right now. And so that's fast. That's just demanding keep doing things the same way. Don't slow down. Don't become aware. Don't be curious. Just keep plowing ahead. Fast, 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 fast. And I'm proposing slow it down, make space. So you say, okay, even though the impulse is there to plow ahead, even though the impulse is to give in to this false sense of urgency, let me just be here. Let me make space. I notice there's an impulse in me that has this, whatever it seems to be expressing this discomfort or this fear or this anger or whatever it is. And instead of just trying to plow forward and plow through it, let me slow down and be curious. Let me notice, what is this? Let me make space for this. Let it know you're welcome here. Thank you for being here. There's space here for you. What what do you need? What do you want to express? And not in a demanding way, not like express it already. Come on, you must express, but just it's okay if you don't have, if it's okay if you don't want to express, but I'm making space. I genuinely care. I'm here. So you're slowing down and then you're switching from this mode of gotta go, gotta go, gotta go to being receptive. There's something that's already happening. Let me be receptive. There's an impulse that's here that is wanting something, that's wanting to express something, that's wanting to know something, whatever it is. Let me be receptive instead of go, 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 plow through, do the thing. I'm going to instead switch to being receptive, which means I have to slow down. In order to really be receptive, you have to slow down. This is a, go, this can easily is connected to the way in which we communicate, which starts internally, how we're communicating with these within ourselves, with the parts of ourselves, and then it extends to how we communicate with others. So we're not actually, if the habitual way of communicating is we only hear what we already think we know. There's nothing new happening. It's just there's some impulses, some sounds, something that's occurring, and we get these flashes, these fast flashes, habitual flashes of this is what I already know, and that's what's being communicated. It's not what's being communicated, but that's what we believe happens fast. Oh, I already know this. I know what all of this is. I understand it all. I know what they're thinking. I know what they're feeling. I know what they're intending, those jerks. And that's all fast. That's habitual. There's nothing new there. Nothing new at all. It's all repetitive history. It's already happened. It's already familiar to you. That's why you say, I already know this. I knew it all along. Those jerks, those bad people, they're so selfish. They're so mean. You already know it. But you don't know anything. That's the real truth. In order to actually be able to receive what's here, to be able to change, to be able to grow, to be able to uh, have something new, to make an opening, to make space for something new, for real change, for transformation, for growth, requires shifting to being receptive, which means I don't know. If you already know, there's nothing new can enter. In order to allow something new, you have to not know, and that means shifting into being receptive. So now you're empty, so you can receive. And that means slowing down, right? So there's the habit, the impulses are still there. There's some trigger, there's some sound, there's something that occurs, and the impulse says, "I already know what this is." That's just the habit. The habit says, "I already know what this is." But to slow down is just it's like, okay, yes, thank you, and let's find out, right? So thank you so much for trying to be helpful and telling me what this is, but actually I'm choosing to slow down. I want to know. I want to find out instead of assuming that I know what this is. Let's slow down, be receptive. So we just have to allow it's a similar thing in that there are these habitual impulses. There's a process by which we get to the same destination over and over and over. The problem is we don't like the destination, right? Something happens, somebody says something, somebody looks at you a certain way, whatever, and the same thing happening internally with the parts of ourselves where we say, I already know what this is. And that's a process. I already know what this is, and then the evidence for why we already know what it is. This happens so fast, though, we don't usually catch it. We just assume, this is the truth. But it's not the truth, it's just a habit. And if you slow it down, you'll notice, oh, yeah, there's these impulses that say, I already know what this is. I know what this means. And you can see the whole process. Oh, yes, it's because here's my evidence for, this person looked at me that way and then it worked out that way. And that's evidence for why it means this. So all of that is there. And if you slow it down, you just notice, well, that's just information. It may be useful information. It may not be useful information, but since following that information, following that pattern in the same habitual way over and over and over again reliably leads me to the same destination, which is a destination I don't want. Let me try something different. I have often referred to this. It's like you're walking down the street and there are people, they say, come follow us into this dark alleyway. And you, oh, I guess I'll follow you into the dark alleyway. And you follow them into the dark alleyway and then they beat you and mug you. And then the next time you're walking down the same street, the same people standing there in the dark alleyway, they say, come follow us into this dark alleyway. And you say, I guess I'm going to follow them in the dark alleyway. And what happens? Reliably, they beat you and mug you. So after a certain amount of time, you might want to realize you have other options. So you're walking along the road and you see the dark alleyway and there are the people and they say, come follow us in the dark alleyway. And you say, let me consider some options here, right? Because that's what it's like. There's these well-worn pathways, and we have a preference for what's familiar, an unconscious preference for what's familiar. But when you realize, when you discover that what's familiar is giving you results that you don't want, then slow it down so that you can make conscious what had been previously unconscious, and that will allow you to introduce new options. Because I promise you, if every time you walk down that street and the people say, come follow us into this dark alleyway, if you just keep on at the same speed, I can guarantee that you will go into that alleyway and get beaten and mugged. You have to slow it down in order to introduce the awareness that gives you more access to more options. Because only then can you realize, okay, here's what normally happens. And when that normally happens, that's the outcome. I don't like that outcome. What could I do differently? And only then could you do something differently. So the key is in all the cases is to slow down to make it conscious. When you slow down to make it conscious, then you can introduce these other options. And in the context of today, what I'm proposing is to slow down and make the space for these impulses, these parts of yourself, welcome them with love and compassion and openness and curiosity. And they will actually reveal to you how to resolve these things. These are just like unresolved threads. Why do they keep coming up? Because there's something unresolved. It's like the Japanese soldiers. You think the Japanese soldiers were like, you know what today would be a really good day for? Today would be a really good day to continue to be living out here in the wilderness all alone, starving to death and trying to murder people. That would be a great use of my day today. Of course, they weren't thinking like that. They just didn't know they had other options. As soon as they realized they had a legitimate other option, they're like, holy cow, thank God. Thank God I can finally be done with this nightmare. So, I mean, can you imagine being this soldier living alone in the wilderness, still fighting a war for all those years? It's crazy. I mean, like when I imagine that, I'm thinking, holy cow. This guy's like where's he getting his food from? It's hard work just to get his food. He's every day he's trying to avoid being captured and killed and tortured and trying to figure out how he's just going to survive, how he's going to get his food, and how he's going to continue to carry out his orders. Brutal. So I am certain that guy was not waking up every morning just like, you know what, this is an amazing day full of wonderful choices, and you know what I'm going to choose? I'm going to choose this. No way. No sane person would choose that. So, but this is the problem is it's the habit. The habit is so strong and it dominates us. And uh, so slowing it down, bringing conscious awareness opens up more options, more choices. Somebody says, if we're already conscious of some pattern we have and still suffer from it, does it mean there is something we're not aware about it yet? I would say yes. Yeah, if there's suffering, then it's because there's insufficient awareness. Because the suffering is a uh, suffering is self-produced. So nobody can cause us suffering. We cause ourself suffering. And so if there's suffering, it's because we are doing something and we're not yet adequately aware of that and of other better options. Because we would definitely, just like I was saying about the Japanese soldier, we would not continue to do these things to ourselves. We would not continue to cause ourselves suffering if we knew about better options. None of us are actually fundamentally insane. We've just, our conditioning is insane. So we are fundamentally sane. At the heart, we are sane. So as soon as we become aware of better options, we will choose them because that fundamental sanity is there. We'll definitely choose the better option. It's just that we're not yet aware of better options. It's the only reason why we continue to produce the suffering for ourselves. Somebody wants to know, can I develop this a little bit? What specifically? Somebody says, what about when we can't see other options? I'm not saying that there are not other options, but in that situation, it feels that this is the truth and there are no other options. The thing I slow down, I have this grace to see that I am doing it to myself, but there are not other options I am aware of in that moment to show it to myself. When you say but there are not other options I'm aware of in that moment to show it to myself. Uh, I'm not sure I understand what you've written exactly, but and if I seem to not be understanding, you can correct me. But from what I think I'm understanding, I think here's what I think I understand. I think I understand that you are describing that you may be aware of suffering and you may accept that the suffering is something that you're doing to yourself and you may slow down enough to become aware of uh, some of how you're producing that suffering for yourself. And then I think what you're saying is that but the limit or limitation that you're perceiving there is that even though you can do all of that, you don't perceive any other options that would give you some better outcome. If I've understood that correctly, then what I would say is uh, that uh, you're you're on the right path. I mean, you're doing like wonderful work there, and there's just more still to see. So it probably, I would say it definitely requires more slowing down and more patience and more openness and curiosity. Sometimes what happens is we're still, um, there's still this violent impulse. So remember, I suggested this word gentleness, and it can be very challenging to really invite and allow this gentleness because of the habit of violence that we often will reach that point where we say enough, enough, I can't handle anymore, enough. And that's that violent impulse. Whereas the gentleness is to just continue to soften, continue to be open, uh, and to trust that what is needed will be revealed. The only thing that's interfering with that is the impulse toward violence, the impulse to cut things off. It's the knowledge is there. It's being revealed. It will continue to be revealed. But when we and not only that, it's being revealed through precisely what it is that we try to shut down, where we say enough. I won't tolerate this anymore. I won't tolerate this feeling anymore. And that's precisely the way in which the knowledge is being revealed. We've just chosen to shut it down. But to continue to trust and remain open and slow down, it will be revealed. It is being revealed. So if I've understood that correctly, then that's my response. Uh, okay. Somebody says, how can we find better options? I think what I was just saying. So I mean, the intention is the main thing. Intention is extremely powerful. If you have the intention, I'm ready. I'm done with harming myself. I'm done with being at war with myself. I'm ready for better options. Then you just work with that intention and notice these parts of yourself that come up that may object, that may say whatever they say. They might say, "Well, but it will never work," or "It's just too takes too long," or "It's too hard," or "I need to react," or "These people aren't treating me right. I should do something," or "I need to get this or get that," or whatever. And if you just notice all of those parts, all those impulses, and trying to instead of indulging them or trying to suppress them, if you just make space for them, you just say, "You're welcome here. I'm 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 happy you're here, and I'm making space for you." And just allow all of that. Then better options reveal themselves. The better options reveal themselves through what it is that seems to be the problem if you approach it in this way. Again, the key is the gentleness, which does not come easily for most of us because we've been so conditioned to violence, so conditioned to shut things down. So the same person says, so the only obstacles to stop the pattern can be only the resistance towards it. The only obstacles to stop the pattern can be only resistance towards it. I think. Uh, so the so the pattern, if you're by the pattern, you mean the pattern of suppression or indulgence, which results in the outcome that we don't want, then if you're wanting to introduce new options, uh, then yes, anytime that you try to uh, hurry it or shut it down or get rid of it or fix it or any of that, then you're prematurely uh, s- stopping the unfoldment of that because it already contains within it what the what it wants, what the resolution is. But it's sort of like imagine uh, okay, imagine the child who is the child wants something. Okay, the child has a desire, specific desire, and the child knows what that desire is. But when the child goes to the adult says, uh, what do you want already? You want a candy bar?" And child says, "No." And, what, what do you want? You want you want a teddy bear? And the child says, "No." "Oh, come on now, what do you want? You want roller skates?" And the child says, "No." And it just goes on and on and on. So the child is never allowed to actually just reveal what the child alone knows. The child knows. The child has that information. The child knows exactly what its desire is. It can reveal that, but if the adult never makes space for that, if the adult is constantly saying, "Hurry it up already. What do you want? Do you you want popcorn? You want what do you want?" And they just keep overlaying stuff, then it's never allowed. Or the other way it could work is the adult says, "Just go away, get out of here, leave me alone." So it can work either way, like imposing something or trying to get rid of. But either way, what's not happening is making space for allowing for the child to reveal what it actually wants. And so by making the space instead of the normal impulses of this violent impulse of, "I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this happen." Instead, we just allow, we say, "Okay, let me make space. I'm curious. I'm choosing patience. I'm choosing to make space. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be receptive." Then the part can reveal what it wants. And another person who had asked a question previously says, it is about the job I want to do. I have not received the new, and I see my mind go back to the old option." Um, yeah, and uh, I would say so. There are so the parts there's a part of you that wants the new. There's a part of you that maybe feels afraid, and its strategy is to go back to the old. And it's not a matter of one part is good and the other part is bad, or one part is right and the other part is wrong, but you can invite and welcome all these parts one at a time, but just let them know that they're welcome and listen to them, make space for them. So if there's a part of you that's afraid and it says, let's go back to the old. And you say, I hear you. I welcome you. You're welcome to be here. Uh, what else do you want to let me know? What is it that you want? And you can say, what do you want when you when you have that old option, what will that give you? So you're just inviting it and letting it know that it's welcome instead of viewing that as bad, like, oh, why this impulse? Why this impulse again? Go back to the old. That's a bad impulse. Let's just shut that part down. Let's get rid of that part. And you can say, okay, it's a valid part. It has something that it wants. It's here expressing itself because it has something that it wants. That doesn't mean that I have to necessarily go apply for the old job. It just means let me make space for. I mean, you could be open to that as a possibility, but you don't need to strategize in that way. Instead, it's just, hey, there's a part here that's wanting to express something. Let me make space for it. This part is considering saying, hey, let's go back to the old option. You say, okay, I hear you. I make space for you. And what would going back to the old option offer you? What is it that you're wanting? But B, again, you have to come at it from this genuinely open-hearted, compassionate point of view, not just like this is a strategy. Let me just roll your eyes like, oh, okay, fine, I'll do this just because, it's a strategy, I'll do it. You have to really be open to this part. Um, Somebody says, every time it's always better to slow down, even if we are in a situation we think we don't have time, there is no emergency. Well, is there an emergency? If there's an emergency, the thing is, if there's an emergency, honest to goodness emergency, then you don't have time to be thinking about these things, right? Like if the building's on fire, you don't have time to be like, gee, what do I want? You act, and if you have a successful if you have successful habits for acting in that situation, then you will survive. And if you don't have successful habits for that situation, then you won't survive. But trying to trying to deal with habits in the moment of an honest to goodness emergency, unless you're really evolved, probably not going to happen. Uh, but fortunately, we're not usually, emergencies are very, very rare. But we live our lives as though we're in a constant emergency. It's like every day. That's why I said from the time you wake up, how long do you have before you go into emergencies? It's like the whole day is an emergency. You wake up and within a short amount of time you go right into, oh, it's another emergency day. And then you're just overtaken by all of the emergency reactions, which insist that you don't have time to slow down. You're like, I don't have time. I really wish I had time, but I'll have time once I've dealt with this emergency and the dozen other emergencies that I need to deal with before I'll have dealt with all the emergencies. Of course, by the time if you ever successfully dealt with all the emergencies and you dealt with all of them as emergencies, it's guaranteed you'll have more emergencies lined up because the emergencies aren't real. The emergencies are what is just the habit. The habit is to treat life as an emergency. This person doesn't love me, it's an emergency. I don't have enough money, it's an emergency. I've got to complete this thing on this timeline, that's an emergency. It's all made up. You don't have to do any of that stuff. None of that is true. These are all things that we just put these pressures on ourselves. Like all of it. You don't have to do any of these things. You could just stay exactly where you are and do nothing. I'm not saying that that would necessarily be a comfortable or ideal choice, but you could. You certainly could. There would be whatever consequences there would be of that, but that option does exist. And you might think to yourself, oh, but no, I couldn't do that because if I did that, then X, Y, and Z consequences. Well, yeah, X, Y, and Z consequences, but you could. And the thing is, you've configured your life as all these emergencies. but they're not emergencies. They're just choices. They're just preferences. I prefer to have a roof over my head. I prefer to have cordial relationships with such and such people. I prefer to have money in the bank. I prefer whatever. I mean, these are preferences. I prefer to have food to eat. I have these preferences. But if I turn those preferences into emergencies, then I've just chosen to make my life miserable. And choosing to live from emergency not only makes life miserable, but it's also very unlikely to actually be aligned with what really matters to you. So it won't really be a fulfilling way to live your life. This person says, I realized I never really learned to listen to my feelings because my mother was not listening to them. Yes, exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, we were all trained. So your mother was trained, and she never learned how to change that training. And so she has acted unconsciously out of that, which then trained you to do the same. Not not in exactly the same way. I'm not proposing that you are your mother or that you behave exactly as your mother, but in a way you do. You just do it to yourself because that's the way that you learned. And the good news is you don't have to keep doing that. You have other options available. Uh, and then this person says, but if there is no emergency, then we won't do anything. No, no. I mean that I understand it seems that way because if you've organized your life in such a way, if you've trained yourself to only act because of as a reaction to perceived emergencies, then of course it's going to seem like, and it might even be true to a certain extent for a little while as you're reorienting, maybe maybe you'll just be like, holy cow, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to act if I'm not treating life as an emergency. Because as you said, you remember I said at the beginning that society has taught us to be insensitive, which I know might some people might disagree because they say, "Well, I'm not. I'm very sensitive. I hurt all the time." Yes, but insensitive, you'll be surprised at how insensitive you've been trained to be. Even though I understand you hurt a great deal, but the insensitivity is, as you were saying, to be insensitive to your own feelings. You don't notice the feelings until they reach that point of absolute misery. You have to be in tremendous amount of pain before you're able to feel. And that's a really hard position to be in. I know all too well. Because to 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 uh I also said this earlier about being this kind of tension and rigidity that comes from the violence. So we're constantly bracing because when we live life as though it's all emergency, then we're constantly braced. Like, you know, the shit's hitting the fan. I gotta brace. But if you keep living your life as an emergency, then you're constantly bracing. And what happens is then you become numb because your nervous system is has certain kinds of efficiency built into it. So if you're it's like you don't need to be consciously aware or sensitive to the things that are constantly happening. Because why? Why would you need to be aware of that if it's constantly there? This is why if you the example I usually use, and I don't know how much this makes sense to people anymore because I think compressors on refrigerators are usually quieter now. But if you've ever had the experience of being in the room with a refrigerator where the and then the compressor starts running to start the cooling process, and at first when it goes on, you might notice it. But as it runs for a little while, then you tune it out and you don't even notice that it's happening until the compressor shuts off. And then all of a sudden it's very quiet. So our nervous systems are like that in that whatever is there as a constant, it will tune out because it's like, well, I don't need to know about that. I don't need to be paying attention to this thing that's constantly there. Our nervous system wants to know about the things that are variable, the thing that's coming and going. So um, when you're constantly bracing, you're there's a lot of discomfort and pain involved, tremendous amounts of discomfort and pain. But your nervous system says, well, gee, I guess I don't need to really know about any of that because it's constant. It You're still aware of it, but not as that. You're aware of it as this sort of we start to think of it as this sort of existential, abstract kind of like something's wrong, or we might experience it as anxiety or something like that, or a tendency to be reactive or something. But we don't notice it the for what it is. We don't actually feel it in that way. To begin to feel it, to start to soften and tune in and feel what's there, initially you might be like, whoa, this is uncomfortable. Um, but as you uh, allow that, what you're allowing yourself is you're like, wow, I have been doing this to myself and I didn't even know it, which is really wonderful. It might be uncomfortable, but it's really wonderful because you can start to allow yourself to become more sensitive. And underneath all of that, you start to notice this tenderness, this receptivity, this uh, beautiful creative impulse. It's just to be yourself, authenticity, which was what you were trying to protect with all of this tension and rigidity. Because, you there you were, and you were just being yourself, and then your mother says, there's something wrong with you. And you're like, I didn't know. I didn't know there was something wrong with me. Oh no. And that cycle starts. Tension, 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 tension. And then you can't even hardly, you can hardly even feel yourself anymore, other than just the the only way you know that you're even alive is because you feel bad. And so as you start to soften that, then there might be a process. You might go through a stage where, as I said, because because of that habit of this tension and rigidity that drives all of the behavior. It's like, I gotta do these things because everything's an emergency. And if I don't do the things, then everything's going to be even worse. And I can't stand for anything to be any worse. It's more than I can already stand already. When you start to soften some of that, then you might go through a phase where you say, gee whiz, I don't know what to do. Or you might not. But it's certainly possible that you might go through that phase. But as you continue, maybe all that's needed then is just to allow yourself to continue just to be and to soften and to trust. Because then what starts to happen is you start to actually feel yourself and you start to feel into your own authentic creative impulses. Because if you live your life from the emergency mode, then you'll be taking lots of action and you'll be doing many things, and there will be outcomes of those many things. And in some cases, not in all, but in some cases, some people might accomplish things that look on the outside to other people to be very remarkable. Like, I'm not going to mention names, but like there are those people who've become celebrities and that's their message is just do the thing, the harder, the more miserable, the better. Just do the thing. And you can look at those people and say, holy cow, they've accomplished these things that are quite remarkable and amazing. But is that the goal of your life, is to accomplish things that other people will say, that's really amazing. That's really remarkable. You know, wow, that person was able to do, so many push-ups. That's amazing. Is that the goal of your life? If so, great, keep at it. But we many times we will accomplish all these things, but they will be empty for us because it was really just us trying to get away from what we were afraid of instead of actually feeling into ourselves and allowing our authentic creative impulse to express through us. Because if you allow your authentic creative impulse to express through you, then I have no way of knowing what that's going to look like. But when you do that, the one thing I can guarantee is that that will be fulfilling for you. Whereas if you're just driven by urgency and emergency, then whatever you accomplish through that, the likelihood of that being a match for what's true for you is so small as to be basically zero. So, and I think most people, both present and historically, have lived their lives in that way, which is why I think that's why things just continue as they do. I think that's why thousands of years after the messages have been delivered of there's a new way, people are still doing it the old way, is just because people haven't yet really understood that we're not here for emergency. We're not here for urgency. We're not here to uh, live according to some external dictates. We're not here to avoid discomfort. We're not here to avoid disapproval. We're not here to get others' approval. We're here to be ourselves. But the only way to be yourself is to be whole, to allow your wholeness, to allow all of the things that need to be resolved within you to resolve so that you can actually come into contact with that creative impulse within yourself and allow that to express because that's what got shut down. You came into this world uh, as that. You were totally innocent. And you didn't come into this world with all of this sense of emergency. It might have got layered on real fast, depending on circumstances and situations, but you didn't come into the world that way. You came into the world being totally yourself, but then along the way, you learned that's not safe. I'm not safe. I need to get their approval in order to be okay. I need to guard against these things. I need to achieve things to appease other people. I need to do these things to protect myself. And there's something that's wrong with me. There's something that's bad about me. I've got to control all these things about myself in order to be okay and so forth. And then you've just stifled that authentic creative impulse. And in most cases, so much so that we don't even know what that is. And therefore we don't even trust. We don't trust in life. We don't trust in ourselves. We don't trust in the creative impulse. We feel alone, lost, afraid, confused, desperate. And that just feeds into that urgency and emergency. And so I really do understand and appreciate it. It's a sensitive and challenging situation to find oneself in, to be so insensitive and numb and afraid. And nonetheless, as I said earlier, we all have to start exactly where we are. There's nowhere else to start. If you try to start somewhere else, it will never work. And sometimes the place where we're starting from is, I mean, in fact, unfortunately, I don't know about unfortunately. I'll say unfortunately. I'll forget it. It's not unfortunate. But the fact of the matter is that oftentimes the place we find ourselves starting from is the last place we wanted to be, but it's where we find ourselves. So if you find yourself metaphorically in some, deep dark forest, in a deep dark cave, in a deep dark hole, all alone, with lots of dangerous, spiky things and whatever, it's like, well, last place you wanted to be, but I guess that's where you're finding yourself starting from. The good news is, though, that wherever you find yourself starting from, no matter how spiky and terrifying it is of your own creation, and and it all of those qualities, the scariness and the spikiness of it, and so forth, the aggressiveness of it is all because of those violent tendencies. And as you really start to explore the process that I've shared today, that all starts to shift and change. So, so wherever you're starting from, the really wonderful news is that you don't even like you're already home. You just don't yet know it. So the more you trust in the process, the more that will be revealed. And uh, it may be scary at times, but it will, if you trust in the process, you'll see how that changes. All right. So one more thing here. Um, if we are sensitive, how can we be living in a world surrounded by unsensitive people? Uh, so I wouldn't worry about other people. I mean, I wouldn't recommend worrying about other people. The so I so you are so on the one hand, you are sensitive to the pain that you experience. And what I'm proposing is that that pain is is the result of internal process, which is much more subtle than the pain that you experience presently. And that's what I'm referring to as the insensitivity, that we're insensitive to the subtle. And that's what I'm describing as a challenging situation to find ourselves in. But it's the situation most of us find ourselves in, is that we experience pain. And when I say pain, it could be physical pain, emotional pain. Okay. But we experience this pain and we think, oh God, I'm so sensitive, feeling so much pain. Yes. But here's the thing is what I'm proposing is that that pain that you're experiencing is like the tip of the iceberg. And you don't know, you're insensitive due to the conditioning of society to all of the rest of the iceberg that's underneath the water, metaphorically. Huge, vast iceberg. You don't know about it. You only know about that little tip that's sticking out, and you say, "Oh God, it's so painful, so sensitive. What do I do?" And usually, if you pay attention, you'll notice what your strategy is. Your knee-jerk reflexive strategy is tense up, which makes you more numb. So then you don't feel the pain as much because you only feel the tip of the tip. But then you say, "Oh God, it's so painful. It hurts so much." And what do? Tense up, which makes you even more numb. So you only feel the tip of the tip of the tip. So this is the process we've been going through. This is what society has taught us. Keep tensing up, numb yourself to it. So you just feel less and less and less. But the thing is, you feel that tip even more acutely. So it hurts just as much. And as long as you continue that pattern, what happens is we just keep feeling less and less, but it hurts more and more. We feel less of it, but it hurts just as much. But because we're running away from it, we keep the same progression, and we can keep doing that for a really, 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 really long time. But the problem is, as I said, that when we finally make the decision, we say, I can't do this anymore. Then that's where we find ourselves as our starting point. And the more insensitive we've become to the vastness of what's there, then as we reverse that process and start to become sensitive to it, it might be something we perceive as quite uncomfortable. I'm not saying it has to be, but it might. Um, and so when you say, how can we live in a world surrounded by unsensitive people? I mean, of course you live in a world of people who are insensitive because that's the nature of it. But you are, I think I'm pretty sure it's a mistake to think, oh, I am the sensitive one, and these are the insensitive people, and they hurt me so much with their insensitivity. Because if you're thinking that, then what you're going to do is tense up. And there you go, doing the same thing, and you become more and more insensitive, but you hurt more. And then you'll continue, you'll say, I hurt so much. And you'll say, it's the insensitive people around me. And the more you do that, the more that pattern plays out. So instead, my recommendation is just focus on yourself. Don't don't concern yourself with the other people. The other people, they're responsible for themselves. You're responsible for you. They're responsible for themselves. I would recommend that you consciously uh, disconnect yourself from all those people in those negative ways. Because you don't want that kind of, you don't want negative connection. You don't want connections that just feed into the pain, the suffering, the misery, the limitation, the restriction. You don't want that kind of thing. So you can choose to dissolve those habits that feed into that, and instead you can just focus on, you know, I am responsible for myself, and I can't control these other people. I don't want to try and do the impossible. I'm going to let them be as they are. I just know that I don't want to suffer any longer. I'm going to let go of what I can't control. I can't control these other people. Let me focus on what I can do. And what I can do is I can soften to and open to all of these parts of myself, these parts which have been here trying to help me, but that I have been in wrong relationship with and hurting myself as a result. So by starting to welcome all these parts, there's a softening that occurs, and there's more of a sensitization. You start to actually feel more. You feel more, and that feeling more allows you to notice the options that you have. I mean, if you don't know that you're making a fist, and you just say, "Gee whiz, my hand hurts," it's like, well, have you considered letting go of the fist? And you're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know about any fists. And you're like, well, look at your hand. And you're like, oh, that's weird. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not making a fist. Must be the other people. Other people are doing that. Uh, but when you finally realize and you finally feel into it and you're like, wow, it's true. I'm making a fist. Then you have other options available. It's like, okay, gee, I could start to let that go. And at first you might say, oh, no, that's not safe. I got to keep the fist. You realize, well, uh, I don't know for sure what will happen if I let go of the fist. Maybe it won't be safe, but I can know for sure that making this fist hurts. So let me at least experiment with letting go of the fist. And you might go through, you make a fist, you let go, you make the fist, you let go, and make fist, and you let go. And after a while, you kind of start to trust that, okay, maybe it's safe to let go of the fist at least a little bit. And so then you start to feel more. Because when you're just making a fist, what happens is after a while, your nervous system stops feeling that. That's what I was saying earlier. It just stops. It's like, why am I going to bother wasting any processing power on something that's constant? I don't need to know anything about this. I don't need to know anything about fingers. There are no fingers. There are no fingers here. There's not. What? Because when you're making a fist, you got no fingers. So you don't need to feel anything there. Now, the problem is, of course, your fingers are cramping up. So when you finally are like, okay, you know what, I'm willing to start to resensitize myself to this hand, and you start to soften the fist, and you start feeling the fingers are like, holy cow, that's weird, that's uncomfortable. You just go right back to the fist. But as you start to trust in the process, you're like, okay, wow, I have fingers. Holy cow, I've got fingers. And then you start to realize all the options that you have available to you with fingers. But at first you're like, I don't, there are no options here. All I know is when I start to release it, I just feel stuff. It's really weird and uncomfortable. I don't like it. So you just keep the habit. But as you start to soften and you continue to trust in the process, you're like, wow, I have options. I have fingers. I can do things with my fingers. So how many options do you now have? And and that process continues to unfold. The more that you soften and the more that you're willing to allow and include, the more sensitive you are to all of that. Because think about this, if you have these parts of you that you've just been shutting down, the part, it's like, here to let you know, I don't like this, I do like this, I want this, I don't like that, you should do this, all whatever, all these parts that are there trying to do something positive. If your habit is to shut them out, shut them down, you say, shut up, go away, I'm going to overpower you, you're bad, you're wrong, get out of here, you're ruining my life, you're sabotaging my life, then you've cut yourself off from all of the power and options that those parts are offering you. They're like your fingers. You shut them off. You say, you're bad. Get out of here. And they're like, well, okay. So now you don't have access to that. You're numb to that, except that the only way you experience it is because these impulses show up that feel bad to you. You experience anger, resentment, frustration, anxiety, and so forth. But you don't get to experience any of the positive options that those parts make available to you until you start to welcome them and feel into them. And as you do that, then, as I said earlier, at first, it's a possibility, not certain, but it's a possibility. There, you might experience some of that as uncomfortable at first, but as you really trust in the process and you welcome those parts, then what starts to happen is through feeling them, they're reintegrated, which means now you have all these options because these parts have tremendous power. I mean, think about what these parts are doing now with that power. You might consider that negative, but they're powerful, right? I mean, if there are parts of you that can quote unquote sabotage your life, well, it's pretty powerful. Wouldn't it be nice to have that power as options instead of fighting with it? So as you feel into that, as you trust in that, as you allow that, then you regain your connection to that and you start to have this harmonious, congruent, allied relationship. And that there's trust there, and that now that power and intelligence can be used in coherent ways when you say, you feel into this is my creative impulse that's authentic within me, and then all parts of you can be on board with that, working coherently in alignment to achieve that. That's really powerful. You have so much power. It's just that right now, a lot of that power is being used at odds. So you're not able to accomplish nearly what you could. And also what you do accomplish is painful and hard. Whereas when all parts of you are working together coherently for the same aim, you experience much more ease in that because you're not working against yourself. And I think that's all for today. Thank you to all of you. Blessings to you all. Take care. Bye for now.